We hear the Republicans talk about big, beautiful bill. I think this is a big, ugly bill. Let's call it what it is. It is the largest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in U.S. history. This reconciliation package proposes devastating cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. My Republican colleagues will tell you that they are just going after waste, fraud, and abuse, but let's be clear. The only way to slash this much safety net spending is by making it harder for people to survive. Their changes will kick millions of Americans off their health care and nutrition assistance. That means more untreated illnesses, more hungry children, more preventable deaths. This isn't just line items in the budget. There are people's lives, the sacrifice of human dignity and of life itself. And for what? So that your billionaire friends can get nearly $300,000 in tax cuts? This is not a serious budget. This is a green light for authoritarianism, for inequality to run rampant. It is a police state budget wrapped in billionaire tax cuts.
If you're tired of politicians arguing about how government should spend your money without showing you where the money actually goes, you're going to want to hear this. Brandon Gill just walked into this debate with a completely different strategy. Instead of trading insults, he started naming specific spending examples and challenging Democrats to defend them. Before we break it all down, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it.
Mr. Gill from Texas is recognized for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, thank you for all of your hard work. I'm thrilled about this piece of legislation as it's getting started. This reconciliation bill, I believe, will balance. It will extend the Trump tax cuts for the working class so that they don't experience the biggest tax increase in American history, and it'll grow the economy. But of course, it will also help us to implement the Trump agenda, which is to clean up the chaos and destruction that Joe Biden unleashed on our country over the past 4 years. It will help us fund the mass deportation of illegal aliens who have been murdering and raping and pillaging American citizens. It will help us unleash our fossil fuel energy sector, and it will allow us to rebuild our military. And of course, it will help us implement DOGE, which this amendment targets, among other things. As DOGE has been rolled out, I think it's been a bit curious because I found that so many of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have not been upset about the waste, fraud, and abuse that this process has uncovered. Rather, they've been angry that the fraud has been exposed at all. We found that for decades, the administrative state has been weaponized against the American people. We can give example after example of flagrant abuses of American taxpayer dollars. We've heard of some of them earlier, but I'll name a few more. $1 million spent to boost French-speaking LGBTQ groups in West and Central Africa through the State Department. Almost $50,000 on a transgender opera in Colombia, also through the State Department. Over $7,000 for a BIPOC speaker series in Canada through the State Department. I think it's worth noting that normal, sane Americans don't know what BIPOC means, and neither do I. $80,000 for an LGBTQ community center in Slovakia, and over $16,000 for a united and equal queer feminist discourse in Albanian society, whatever that is. And of course, we also know that our taxpayer dollars have been going to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars every year to fund left-wing media outlets like NPR and PBS, paying for welfare for illegal aliens, and paying for giving out payments to international organizations that are censoring and pushing for the censorship of American citizens. Our own federal government is using taxpayer dollars to promote ideologies that tens of millions of Americans find utterly repulsive. I think if the other side of the aisle has such a deep ideological opposition to this DOGE process, I challenge them to be straightforward with the American people and explain why taxpayer dollars should be funding queer feminist discourse in Albanian society or drag shows in Ecuador. I don't think that they will, but I would love to see it if they did. Elon Musk acting as an employee and an agent of the president, I think, has certainly more democratic legitimacy than Anthony Fauci did, and he certainly has more democratic legitimacy than the nameless, faceless bureaucrats who have been running our lives for several years, the waste of which he is rooting out currently. President Trump here with DOGE is doing exactly what he was elected to do. DOGE is a part of the Trump mandate. It's extremely popular. In fact, Elon Musk and the DOGE movement right now are polling at a higher approval rating than Joe Biden had on his way out of the White House. President Trump, of course, is polling.
This congressional exchange highlights one of the biggest arguments in Washington right now. Should the federal government spend more money protecting social programs, or should lawmakers aggressively cut government waste and unnecessary spending? Gill and Omar argued that the Republican reconciliation package would hurt working-class Americans by reducing spending on Medicaid and SNAP. Her argument was that these programs provide essential health care and food assistance, and that cutting them could leave vulnerable Americans struggling. That is a serious concern, and any major change to Medicaid or SNAP deserves careful scrutiny. But then Republican Congressman Brandon Gill of Texas took the microphone and shifted the conversation toward government spending. Gill argued that the legislation would extend Trump-era tax cuts, support economic growth, strengthen the military, increase immigration enforcement, expand American energy production, and continue efforts associated with DOGE. But the part that really caught my attention was his discussion of government spending overseas. Gill cited examples of taxpayer-funded programs involving LGBTQ initiatives, a transgender opera in Colombia, and other cultural programs abroad. His broader argument was simple. Before Washington asks Americans to send more money to the federal government, shouldn't lawmakers first examine how existing money is being spent? That is an important question. And this is where I think the political debate often becomes too simplistic. It is not enough for Republicans to say there is waste. They need to prove it, document it, and explain exactly how much money can be saved. At the same time, Democrats cannot simply label every spending reduction as an attack on poor Americans without addressing legitimate questions about government efficiency. If taxpayer money is being spent on programs that Americans would consider unnecessary, lawmakers should be willing to investigate those programs regardless of which political party created them. Gill also defended DOGE and argued that the initiative is exposing problems inside the federal bureaucracy. Supporters see DOGE as an attempt to make government more accountable. Critics argue that aggressive cuts can disrupt important services. That debate deserves facts, not slogans. And there is another important point here. Government spending is ultimately paid for by taxpayers. Whether you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent, or completely apolitical, you have a legitimate interest in knowing where that money goes. At the same time, claims about individual spending programs should be independently verified and put into context. A dollar amount can sound shocking without explaining the program's purpose, funding source, or overall significance within the federal budget. That's why congressional oversight matters. For me, the strongest part of Gill's argument wasn't simply naming controversial programs. It was challenging lawmakers to explain why those programs deserve taxpayer funding. If Democrats believe the programs are worthwhile, explain the benefits. If Republicans believe they're wasteful, prove it. That's how serious government should work. And when it comes to Medicaid and SNAP, the same standard should apply. If Republicans are proposing changes, they should clearly explain who will be affected, how much money will be saved, and how vulnerable Americans will be protected. Americans deserve both fiscal responsibility and responsible government. What I don't think we need is Washington throwing around emotional accusations while avoiding the actual numbers. This debate isn't just about Brandon Gill or Ilhan Omar.